Welcome back, Year 10s. This is the second part of this week's work. This morning we're going to have a look at the actual contextual challenges set by the exam board, so the themes that you've been given to investigate for your coursework. You're going to write a design brief, and then we're going to think about how we're going to investigate the needs and wants of the user, so the person who might buy or might benefit directly from your product. So firstly, anyone remember how the marks for your whole coursework are divided up across those 4 areas? Hopefully you've got some memory of that. Fingers crossed. You can't talk to me, so I'm guessing you have. So this first section we're spending the next few weeks looking at is worth 16 marks. You can see how they're divided up. We talked about that in the first time. What that looks like, if you divide that up across the time we have to do the coursework between now and the deadline, February half term, it looks a bit like this. Now, I've shown, so you've got the topics on the left, the percentage of the total mark in the second column, a little calculation of time that I've put in, so that's how many weeks we need to use if we're going to use the same percentage of our time as it is as the marks are. And then in that first section up there under investigate, I've broken it down line by line, week by week. So this first week, although it's dated as this, well, the week I'm recording this, which for you will be last week, you've got 6 weeks to do that first section if it's going to take up 16% of the time. So that's roughly how your time should be divided up. So moving on, we're going to investigate the contextual challenges, and you are going to choose a contextual challenge and investigate it so you can find a reason to design and prototype something. Now, if halfway through the work that we're going to do this week, you decide actually you've had a really good look at it and you don't want to do that contextual challenge, then that's fine. Go back, do the other one. That will be the part of your coursework. You can submit both parts for your coursework. It just shows that you've thought very widely about the topics before you decide which one it is that you're going to do. So these are the contextual challenges. First one is, how can products be used to promote a more sustainable lifestyle? And the second one is, how can products be used to stay safe at the coast? So this is a mood board of sorts to help you think about how products can be used to promote a more sustainable lifestyle. So as it says on the board, this is just a small selection of possible products, but what else can you think of? So in terms of sustainability, here we're obviously thinking about electricity, how we can use renewable resources to produce electricity to help us in our daily lives. Other topics in terms of promoting a more sustainable lifestyle. So we could think about how to reduce use of a specific resource. So maybe that's fuel oil. So how do we reduce our use of fuel oil? Well, we're going to walk and run and cycle places much more than drive or take the bus or take the train. So obviously if you're traveling from Poole to Manchester, you're probably not going to cycle it. It's inefficient. You will spend a lot of time doing it. It's also tiring. You'll be exhausted when you get there. However, if you're going to the shops to pick up some dinner or something, or maybe traveling to school, maybe think about cycling more than getting in a car and getting a lift, or driving when you're a bit older. Along the same lines, we can think about increasing our use of renewable resources. So maybe as a household, you could think, well, I'm not going to spend money buying electricity from sources that produce that electricity by burning fossil fuels. We're going to look for some sort of green tariff. That's something you can talk to your parents about. Do they do that? I don't even know whether I do that. I think I do it partially. So there's a lot more to promoting a sustainable lifestyle beyond what's shown on this page, but this is just a start to help you think. These are kind of the what we'd call the low-hanging fruit, the first things you might think of in terms of basic projects that you could think about. Okay. The second topic is keeping safe at the coast. So what can you design to keep people safer at the coast? So this mood board I've just put together just shows you typical activities that people might do at the coast. So maybe it's as families, as individuals, as a group of friends, as a group of people who share a hobby. And then obviously where they might do them, what they might do, things they might encounter on the way, that kind of thing. So if you're at all interested in that one, start having a think about the sorts of products you could potentially design that would help to keep people safer. Okay. So you need to pause this now and go away and spend 20 minutes, half an hour, making a massive mind map of all the things that you can think of related to the contextual challenge that you are now interested in. So look back at the stuff we did in the first section, and just spend some time making it as big and as all-encompassing as possible. So if you want to do that online, that's fine. If you want to do that on paper, that's fine. But go away, start to think. When you've got a massive mind map full of lots of options, lots of wheres, lots of who's, lots of what's, then come back and continue to work through this. So hopefully now you have chosen your contextual challenge, you've made a massive mind map, and you have highlighted some areas of interest. So exactly the same thing that we did in that first part of the first part of the work this week, but you're doing it with the actual one of the actual two contextual challenges that we've been given. If you haven't finished that, go back, do that now, because there's no point moving on until you've thought as completely as possible as you can about the contextual challenges, be it just one of them or be it both of them if you want. So now you've investigated the contextual challenges, we need to think about writing a design brief. Now you can go back and revisit this at any point, but the design brief will help you think about what happens next and what's important and what isn't. So hopefully you know what a design brief is because you would have talked about it for years. Hopefully we had a little refresher last lesson, so hopefully that will have refreshed your memory as well. So based on what you've thought about now, so you've chosen your contextual challenge, you've done your massive mind map, you've thought about the areas of interest, could you write a design brief at the moment? So do you know all about the whats and the whos and the wheres and the whens and the whys such that you could write one down? So if you can, that's brilliant. We can move on. If you're not sure, then you need to go back and keep working around those first sections. So the bits that I've highlighted in that first box on the left. So go back, keep going round until you're happy. Now this is where you might need to get in touch with us. So remember, we're all here to help. We may not be there in a room with you, but we are here online. You can email us, put comments in, and we will answer those comments and those emails just as soon as we read them. Okay. And when this work goes live, we'll all be around so that as soon as you have questions, hopefully we can answer them straight away. But do not contemplate moving on until you are completely happy with this first box and you know you can define what it is that you're going to do in that simple design brief outlining the 5 W's. So you've got your design brief. You know roughly what it is, what sort of area you want to be looking at, maybe specifically a product you want to design. You know roughly who it's going to be aimed at and where, when and why it's required. Okay, so now we need to find out a bit more about who it is that's either going to buy it or use it. So we're going to think about the user. We're going to find out what they need and what they want, which are two very different things. I'm not going to investigate, I'm not going to use both contextual challenges in this presentation to work through. I'll just use one, but you'll see why there's a big difference between what people need and what they want. Okay, and that will become apparent shortly. So, how can products be used to stay safe at the coast? So just have a think about these questions. So if we're in a classroom, I'll be getting you to think about it and we'll be taking some options, but just have a think about it before we move on. So firstly, what do we mean by the coast? The question said the coast. The coast could be different things to different people. So you need to try and you need to investigate all of that so that you've got every possible opportunity to design an interesting product. Okay. Now, it is coursework. You're doing it for one of your GCSEs. You're taking lots of GCSEs. However, in the past, people have come up with GCSE projects, developed products, and then made a living out of it. These products have been either bought by companies and turned into commercial products, or the people have turned them into commercial products themselves with support from mentors and outside companies. So just because you're doing it for a school project doesn't mean that it's not actually feasible. Okay, the more feasible the product is, the better marks you'll get, and the more likely it is possible that it could become an actual product in reality. Okay, a real life, fully working product. So who goes? What do we mean by the coast? Who goes there, and what do they do there? So those are questions you need to think about before you can start to think too deeply about the specifics of the product. So who goes to the coast? Again, in your mind and thinking back to that the pictures I put up earlier, there's a whole bunch of people who go to the coast. So I want you, if you're interested in this contextual challenge, I want you to be doing this before I show you what I've put up here, what I'm about to show up here. If you're doing the other contextual challenge, the sustainability challenge, what you need to do is think about working through your large analysis diagram as we go through this. So I'm using the coast question as an example. You're going to be thinking along the same lines, but with the other contextual challenge in your mind all the time. So who goes to the coast, or who could make their lives more sustainable? So who goes to the coast? Well, I've broken it down into different ways. The families bit might look slightly familiar from the previous work this week, but thinking about the different types of activities. So who goes to the coast? Well, all sorts of families. Tourists. Now, tourists are a different group. They could be tourist families from abroad. They could be tourist families from this country. Now, if they're tourists, it may be that if we're designing a safety product, English may not be their first language, so they're not going to be able to read in the same way that hopefully we can all read. So they may not, their grasp of English may be such that they don't understand some of the more complicated technical words. So if we were designing, for instance, some sort of interactive sign to persuade people of a specific safety message that would keep them safe, then we might need to think about using less words and more pictures, so that we're not relying on language to get our message across. We're relying on images and icons, rather like the Egyptians did. We're thinking about groups of friends. They might go. So we've got individuals who might go, couples, older couples, younger couples, people with dogs, people without dogs, all sorts of things. So all sorts of different groups of people who go to the coast, who all go for different reasons, are going to participate in slightly different activities. And the thing about going to the coast is, all these people who go to the coast are going to have a slightly different idea about what's actually risky. Because we're talking about staying safe, so we need to think about what's risky and how risky is it, and how people perceive risk. So have a think about that for a minute. Once you've got a big list of who, I want you to be thinking about what it is that they do when they get there. So I start to add in possible activities that these people could engage in. That could be onto that diagram, could be a separate leg of that diagram. That's entirely up to you how you want to present your diagram. My diagram will look like this. I suggest you pause this, go away, fill in all the what it is that they do, and then come back and carry on. So now you're ready to carry on. So I've added some activities. This is a reasonably comprehensive list of activities of the things that people do at the coast. So we've got things that they might do on or in the water, things they might do whilst based at a beach, things they might do on the land around the coast, and then other things. So we've got things sort of deeper water activities like sailing, motorboating. Some of that might be commercial, some of it might be leisure or recreation. There's quite a variety of activities that people engage in when they are at the coast. So we're going to have to think about what their needs and wants are now. So we've thought about specific users. So you might think, okay, I'm going to try and design some sort of product to make paddleboarders safer. Okay, fine. So we need to find out what it is that they need, and then later on what it is that they want, which are, again, as I said, are two different things. So who picks up the pieces when people are not safe at the coast? So there's a couple of organisations that I'm thinking of specifically who deal with people who end up not being safe at the coast. Hopefully you know exactly who they are. One is very local, big local employer, and the other one is a massive government agency. So the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency, you'll probably be thinking about the Coast Guard. That's the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency's operating arm. So the MCA is the government department, and then the Coast Guard is the operation arm. So if someone had got into trouble in the sea, they would call 999 or call Mayday on their VHF radio. That would end up at the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard would then organise a search and rescue, and the majority of those search and rescues are undertaken by the lifeboats. So these are the people who know how people get into trouble. They don't know why people get into trouble, but they know how they get into trouble. So what could prevent people needing to be rescued? Who do we need to speak to find this out? Now, this would be an ideal opportunity to talk to somebody who has insider knowledge. Now, I do know people who work at the RNLI who have access to the insider knowledge, so they can tell us exactly why people get into trouble and very simply what they need to do to avoid getting into trouble, which may well help some of you design better products. So anyone who's interested in this contextual challenge, this would be a really good opportunity to interview someone. Granted, at the moment that's going to be slightly harder, so we could do a Zoom meeting. I've had approval from one of my old colleagues at the RNLI, and they're happy to do that. So if this is your chosen challenge, start to think about what it is that you might want to ask them, and then we can set up a meeting, and then you can ask them the questions, and it's, that's really good, proper research. So moving on. What can we do to find out what people want? So what people want is often very different to what they need, but what do people want? So if you're interested in paddleboarders, what is it that paddleboarders want to help enjoy their paddleboarding and to make sure it's as safe as possible? How are you going to find that out? Well, there are lots of ways to find that out. Remember, what we want is quality research. So we need to be talking to the people who do the sport. So there's various different types of research. There's primary research, secondary research. So secondary research is things like doing a Google search, what's called desk research, so rummaging around the internet, finding out information. Primary research is research that you would do yourself. So you would talk to someone who does that activity, they would tell you something specific. Okay, and the more people you speak to, the better the quality of that research. So if you talk to 100,000 people, you're going to get some good quality findings. You'll have spoken to a lot of people, a lot of information, a lot of data. If you talk to one person, it's a case study. So what that one person says is true for that one person, but it's not necessarily true for all of those people. Okay. So what can we do to find out what people want? Well, we could do some focus groups. It's possible. If we've got lots of parents who are paddleboarders and somebody wants to do something about paddleboarding, we could do a focus group in school, or a focus group Zoom meeting or Skype call or whatever. Market research questionnaires. So you may well have been emailed one of these as a spam in the past. We could do internet surveys like SurveyMonkey. You could write a survey, you could send it out to friends and family, or if it was in a sports group, into like members of that sports club, they could then fill that in. That would give you some good quality primary research. Don't forget, there's also an awful lot of research out there already. There's a company called Arkenford, and Arkenford do a massive water sports participation survey. So if you're interested in looking at products to help people stay safe whilst doing a water sports, I would start looking for results of the Arkenford survey. There's a lot of information on there. It's very, very useful. I should probably come clean at this point. Whilst I am your teacher now and will be in September, a couple of years ago I worked at the RNLI for 3 years, so I've got quite a lot of insider knowledge into keeping people safe. But you're obviously going to need to find out how to find out that knowledge. It needs to be proper research, not just having a chat with me and then you writing up that Sir said this and that. Okay, it needs to be proper research. Next, so what questions should we ask? So if we're writing a survey and we want to find out some good quality information from people, what questions should we ask? And similarly, as we'll come on to shortly, what questions should we not ask? So if you're writing questions about people and their needs and wants and possible products, is there something we could base our questions on? There's a question for you. If you were investigating products, what sort of questions would you be asking about those products if you were conducting some sort of product analysis? Is there a set of questions that you would use to ask questions about specific products? What I'm hoping you're thinking is, oh yeah, Access FM or Cafe Q. We've done those in school. That's the type of thing we need to be asking. And the same applies to people when you're asking about products. You can ask people some of the questions that I've put there. So you can ask them about form and function and safety and cost and all that kind of thing. So you can use Access FM or Cafe Q or the the questions that I've put up just now. You can ask them about their attitude to risk. Do they consider their sport risky? If so, if they do, what safety precautions do they already take? So if you're looking at some sort of product to help them stay safe, what do they already do to help them stay safe? What do they actively not do to help them stay safe? If there's something that lots of people actively don't do to stay safe, why is it that they don't do it? Why is it they don't do it? For instance, people on boats don't wear life jackets all the time. There's a perception that things they do every day, so if I'm just going to motor through the harbour out to Studland Bay, oh well, I do that all the time. That's fine. If it was really windy and really cold, and the water was rough, they would probably put their life jacket on because they would think, oh, this is could be a bit dangerous. This don't want to fall in there. Oof, put my life jacket on. But when the weather's calm and it all seems normal, they think that the risk is lower. But actually, the threat to them falling in the sea, or the consequence of them falling in the sea, is the same. The sea is always cold. They can get affected by it in exactly the same way anytime. So they take more risk in the summer, which is why more people end up dying on boats in the summer. But anyway, let's move on. So what should we avoid when writing questions? So if we're trying to find out useful information, what questions should we not ask? Have a think about that. So questions we should avoid. Things like, you have to have a mix of open and closed questions. If every question they answer is no, you're not going to find out much that's useful. So we need a range of different types of questions. Do not ask a question that will stop the process. So if you're going to design a desk lamp and you say to people, would you buy a desk lamp? And they say no, then they can't answer the rest of the questionnaire. Ask one question at a time. What's your favourite colour out of red, blue and yellow? And would you buy a product that was red, blue and yellow? You've asked two questions in one, so stick to one question. Avoid leading questions. Leading questions would include something like, do you consider boating dangerous? So there are ways you can ask that question that aren't a leading question. By putting the word dangerous in the question, you're already making them think it's a dangerous activity. Simple question would be, so the last thing there, use scales to allow strength of preference. So you could put a question that says, how, in your opinion, is boating a risky activity? On a scale of 1 to 10. 10 is very risky, 1 is not very risky at all. So it allows them to think about it and show some sort of preference. Whereas if you just say, do you think boating's dangerous? Dangerous is a more emotive word than risky, and it only gives them the yes or no option. Whereas if you use the scale, it allows them to be more accurate with their answer. So things you need to think about when writing your questions. So we'd like you to write a questionnaire to help you find out what people want. It should be around about 8 questions. So there's no point writing a questionnaire that's got 3 questions on it. That's not going to get you much useful data. Think carefully about the questions. By all means, check with us. Okay, check with us. Check with the internet. So things like technologystudent.com. I'll put together a list of links. We'll put together a list of links to help you rummage around and find useful guidance. Yeah, think about what it is that you're trying to find out and whether it will affect your designing. Okay, if the question and the answer to the question isn't really going to change your design, there's no point asking it. It's just a waste of time. So be concise. So if you're thinking about the coast, again, you've probably got lots of questions. So what would keep people safe? What products exist already to do this? So we'll come on to this next week, looking at existing products. But before we look at existing products, you need to be sure about which area of the question you're going to look at. And then, why do people still need helping then? It's a good question. So things you need to do after this PowerPoint finishes. So you need to finish those 5 tasks below. Okay, think carefully when choosing your contextual challenge. You'll be working on it till February half term. It's quite some time away. Okay, bearing in mind it wasn't so long after February half term that we went into lockdown. So next February half term is when you'll finish this project. So you're going to start it this week. Think carefully. So if you're really not sure, look at both contextual challenges. Ask us lots of questions. Do lots of research. There's a whole world of information out there. If you want to look at scientific papers, go on Google Scholar. Look at other people's research. Okay, that's perfectly valid as long as it's all referenced, so we know it's not plagiarized. So if you're using someone else's work, you must acknowledge it in your work. So credit someone's work. Put a link into it. Nice and easy way. Put a link in so we can see where it came from. Okay. Those are the things you need to be doing. So choose one. Make a mood board, get a load of pictures together. It'll help you think more widely, okay? Working through the mind map, do the design brief. Again, if you can't quite answer the design brief, then go back, keep looking at the mind map, keep looking at the mood board, and then you can start to move on with your user research. Yeah, this slide just shows you a little bit more detail, help answer maybe some questions. So yeah, work through it, complete the tasks, ask us questions, and we will help. Good luck. Good luck, as I said before. It's a fascinating opportunity to design and make a prototype of something that could be really interesting, something that you'll be really into, and could be the start of an actual business. So spend the time wisely, do it properly, do it well, and enjoy it.